John Holstetter University Chaplain, Ottawa University. Gosh, the last thing that I really remember clearly was getting ready for Easter Chapel. And we had done the recording for Good Friday, and we were getting ready for stuff, and we'd had this whole series on trying to figure out what to do with Lent and how to make a real tangible difference towards God's plan. And I still wasn't feeling perfect with what I wanted to do myself, but I really wanted to do something that would really make a difference in the world. And I had come back from my trip and felt a little ill, like a cold, but I was feeling better. And so that was sort of the night. And then I got worse with my cold, which I now know was a couple kinds of pneumonia, but I didn't know then. But I remember having a really hard time sleeping and praying a lot and being ready for Easter and excited, but also sad that I was going to be sick. And that was pretty much all that I remember until I woke up in the hospital. I remember now going to the ER the first time. That was after work. My brother and it seems like somebody else thought that I looked bad enough that they thought I should go to the hospital and maybe get an antibiotic. The doctor was going to be closed. It was too late for the doctor. And so I remember going there, but it was more of an emergency visit. I don't really remember being checked in. Somehow I think that was the second time. It ended up being a lot of hospital trips in those few days. Truly, I remember less and less of the hospital trips. After a while, they're sort of a blur. I remember my room, and I remember some of the really nice nurses, at least within the hospital here in Ottawa. And then I remember being in Kansas City in the hospital. But more and more, those are sort of like a dream. I really don't. From that first trip into the hospital and sort of the blur within Easter and tomb and resurrection thoughts, and it was really sort of an interesting concept of dream and daydream and not a lot of clarity. I mean, truly, I was one of those guys. I realized somewhere in this point where I really didn't know the year. I could have told you that Easter was happening, but if you asked me what year it was, I wouldn't know. And I've seen people in the hospital like that, but I've never been that way. But it just was too fuzzy and too surreal. And frankly, I knew I was getting sicker. And I think that I came closer to an awareness that I probably was dying. And that in itself was humbling because I felt like I had a lot of stuff I wanted to get done. And I wasn't ready. But I also felt that it was sort of inevitable. If it was God's plan, it was God's plan. So more and more then I felt like I needed to be present in the moment, sort of see where God called me to move and do. But I became less and less aware of what journey I was on, and more aware of what journey I suddenly had sort of skipped over to. I know that I was blessed with some wonderful doctors and nurses and some cool people, some of whom I knew from classes, some who Linda had taught. Just neat people. I mean, I was with wonderful people. I knew that they knew what they were doing. I knew that they were frustrated because they were surprised at how sick I was getting and they couldn't fix it. Not in the way they thought they could or wanted to. I knew that they were doing everything they could. They were asking me really tough questions like, are you ready to have open heart surgery? Well, that's a big deal. Do you understand the risks of the surgery? And giving me odds as far as whether or not I would live or die, and telling me how this could change my life forever. And gosh, the only thing I've done up to this point is taken an aspirin every now and then. I've never had any real health issues, and so the whole concept of these kind of serious questions, I remember all that. I knew that it was for real. I mean, I knew that they were going to try to make me better, but I also knew that they weren't quite sure what was going on. And so I knew that it was going to end up in surgery, probably in a long one, like 8 hours. And I knew there was a chance I would die on the operating table. But that's really those are the only real clarities I felt from most of those conversations. I sort of can feel my scar. I think everybody has said, all the nurses and the doctors have said there's a really good scar. This was a wonderful surgeon. It's weird. I've never had anything quite that big, but it feels pretty clean. Again, I couldn't have had better people taking care of me, and considering how recently it's been, I feel like it's doing really well as far as healing. I have this really cool machine that if my heart stops, it shocks me back into to having a beating heart again, and I'll have that for a while, and then I'm going to start some new exercises and all that stuff this week. Going to transfer over from home health care because I'm now home, so, and then go into rehab and things. And then, the big thing for me is this really was everything we talked about. This became my time in the desert as far as what is the tangible thing that I do now that I'm back here and home and with my birds and not the drums at the school. And we had just worked with a student, and he had said, in trying to figure out privilege and sort of responsibility, maybe it's not so much talking about what Jesus would do, but carry the cross. What, as a Christian, what obligation, what responsibility, what right, what we're supposed to do then is different than most because we have to carry the cross of Christ. And that is our greatest privilege. And it's about as exciting as cleaning a toilet. I mean, it's hard work. It's not glamorous or glorious. You don't get a lot of kudos with it. You have to help people and pray for your enemy and all that. We had just decided that to sort of go with our high school programming, talking about carrying the cross of Christ. At this current time with all this political shenanigans and all this frustration and the COVID dregs. And so I was really happy with that, but I hadn't really thought about how or what that looked like for me. And now suddenly I'm sort of facing a rebuilding of my own life that says, how do I stand up for the rest of my coil time, my earth time, in really tangibly carrying the cross of Christ? And man, I didn't expect to have to make that decision, even though I wanted to in a lot of ways. I think the only way that I really could have was to really have to sort of stare down that shadow of death and realize that time on earth is short. And if I'm going to really do something to make a difference in God's plan tangibly, I better hurry up and do it. It's great to think about eternity and heaven and all that, but if I'm going to roll up my sleeves, this is my chance to do it now, because time goes so quick. No, really, there was a definite understanding and awareness that I'd had surgery. But I was more interested in, okay, what am I going to do about it? How soon before I get up and could get going? Now I had stuff that I could get done that I wanted to do. When do I start that? How does this change my mission? How does this change my mission in working with and for God? How does this change this year's Easter concept? How does this make a real difference? How does this thing that was clearly scary enough that I don't want to think about it too much, how does it become something that really is an opportunity and not just something that was a setback? How does it become the best thing that's happened in my life? Not the worst, all that. But the surgery itself was more of a, wow, I've become one of those people that has a heart condition now. Wow. Where before it was always like, yeah, people were like, do you have any health problems? Nah. Now suddenly I've just had open heart surgery. That's pretty big. So yeah, I have a big problem now. I probably cost more money on my insurance. I don't know. I think part of it is I'm surprisingly more weak than I thought I would be. So part of it is you sort of think, oh, it's a sick day, it's a vacation day. There's things you can do, and there's all sorts of honeydews and things like this video and all that. But I still have trouble making a fist on one side, and I can't lift much, and can't walk much, and so part of it was just trying to figure out how do I go back to my world in a way where I can function and get around at a time where there's so many small things I should be able to do, but I have to relearn them. Part of it is I'm excited and eager to get going because I feel like I've been given additional time to get in there and make commentary and talk about the world, but also understanding that the flesh is weak. No matter how strong our minds are and engaged our hearts are, you can only push yourself so hard because the body parts of Christ are not always the strongest. Yeah, but I haven't figured it out yet. I think part of it, and that for me, for people, is because this filming in itself is going to be a lot more raw than what we would do at the chapels, is trying to figure all that out together. I mean, I think with my own prayer and discernment, with the prayers others are going to send my way, try to figure out what does this mean and what makes this real, what makes this matter, what makes this doable in a world where I'm probably not feeling the best I've ever felt, but I'm certainly feeling the most motivated to get more stuff done, especially as part of the plan of building God's kingdom. But I don't know how that looks or what that pace is like yet. So I guess we see it together. And I think to be open, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't know through all this that I now do that I wish I would have known. I mean, I didn't know what any of this was like. I wish somebody would have told me before I had open heart surgery what some of this stuff was, because it was pretty scary, frankly. And with Linda in heaven, and at the end of the day, there was just stuff that I never thought about. So I would also like people to know, so maybe if it does happen to them sometime, or something similar does, they at least know the right questions to ask, both in their own hearts and their doctors, but also to pray about. Not yet, but I will. I mean, I really got to think on that one myself. I have a great family, wonderful friends, and I was well supported. But even that, were there times where I felt a little scared and a little alone, yeah. I mean, I certainly reached out to God at those times. That helps. But what do you need as far as tangibility from a friend or a brother or a sister? I don't know. Maybe there's some stuff you just can't get. Maybe there's stuff I did need that I didn't know how to audibilize. I do really want to reflect on that as I sort through the dreams and the reality feelings of what that experience was. When was I really thirsty? When was I really scared? That kind of stuff. But I think again I'll have to discover that too as my mind sort of wakes up again to those times where I really did think I was dying, and so I just resigned myself to it, and where I really did think I was going to live and come out stronger and a better champion for God's plan. And so I really wanted to pay attention to what his voice was saying. But those times got awfully blurry for me. You know, we've struggled with that, I think, this whole broadcast season. In where is that line between faith and love of God and trust in God? And where is that line between the support that we need from man, the support that we can give to man, give to our fellow pewmates, even if we don't like them, how do we love them? I don't know. I really don't. Where is the line then between the duty, the reason that we need to stick around, do God's work because somebody has to, because we have to roll up our sleeves and carry his cross, all that? And where is the luxury of being able to say that we've been as close as we can to good and trusty servants, and so we can just take God's hand and go home, take the day off, be done, and not worry that we didn't do enough? At least for me, I don't know that I'm confident yet that I have done enough. As much as it sounds pleasant to take the rest of the week off, I don't know that I could feel like that was fair. So in some ways, the motivation right now is to make sure that I do as much as I can, encourage others to do the same, so we can all take the day off together, maybe. Otherwise, it seems sort of like you leave the battle or leave the need, and I at least right now don't have faith that craves that, personally at least.
Do you think your belief might have changed?
I don't know. Just ask me that question in a few weeks.